It used to be that the only screen in the house was the box in the living room, but today children are surrounded by screens, from televisions to computers to mobile devices, and that has raised new challenges for parents who must decide when to embrace technology and when to pull the plug. In part one of this week's Focus Report, WGBH News reporter Stephanie Leyden looks at how technology can both help and hinder our kids.
As 9-year-old Chris Ridley maneuvers to stay one step ahead of his buddies on the playground, he is playing a game that is both simple and fun.
We're just trying to attack us and get the ball, and we're passing it around.
But old-fashioned child's play faces a new and constant competition. Listen to what Chris likes to do best.
I like to do video games 50% and outside 50%.
Video games are as close as the nearest smartphone. Managing screen time has become a part of parenting.
I try to cut it down to, the range that I'm comfortable with, but it's hard to do. They're just going to grab it anytime they can.
Kids are spending more time than ever in front of screens, as much as 7.5 hours a day. But most studies on kids and screens were done with television long before the launch of the first iPhone, so no one really knows the impact of today's connected devices.
We are conducting a vast, uncontrolled experiment in sociology here by sort of dumping all this technology on us.
Dr. Michael Rich at Children's Hospital in Boston says immediate access to information, as in I'll Google that, is leading to a generation quick with an answer but slow to develop critical thinking. And there's the issue of eye contact.
Are you seeing more who are unable to make an eye-to-eye connection?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
You've seen a change in kids.
I've seen a change in kids.
And for younger children, he says there's a cost for handing over the iPad when mom or dad needs a break.
That becomes the default activity, both for the child and for the parent.
In reality, parents do sometimes take the easy way out, calling for takeout instead of making dinner. But just like takeout, the quality of screen time varies. For instance, your kid could take aim at virtual pigs.
Let's make them be very simple.
Or they can do this too. Turn bananas into a keyboard. It's one of the many projects to come out of MIT Media Lab's lifelong kindergarten group, a playful atmosphere with a serious goal, inspiring kids to use technology in ways that are both creative and perhaps just as important, social.
It's not just whether they're using technology, but is it a social process? Are there other people with them, or when they're older, other people online that they're relating to rather than just being alone?
Researcher Natalie Rusk believes technology is an important learning tool, but worries when it replaces outdoor activity.
So the trend is potentially bringing the technology away from the screen.
Yes, and as things get more mobile, I think we'll maybe have less screen time and more devices that we wear.
Whatever form it takes, child development experts say we're at a crossroads. Technology is now child's play. They say kids will figure out the game. The question, will it be one that helps them become consumers or creators?
Right arm in, take your right arm out.
And will parents remember a piece of advice as relevant in the age of the iPhone as it was before there were phones? Go play outside. Stephanie Leyden, WGBH News.
All right, well, is there a difference between good screen time and bad screen time when it comes to kids? Here to help answer that is Dr. Steve Schlotzman from the Clay Center for Young Healthy Minds at Massachusetts General Hospital, and welcome to you, Stephen.
Thanks very much for having me.
So if we don't have any data in on this yet, if we really don't know what screen time does to kids, is it possible when we do the study it's going to turn out to be a good thing?
Sure, it's always possible. That's the problem with not having data. As they said in that video segment we just watched, all of the data is around TV, around older forms of video and the less interactive or non-interactive forms.
Exactly.
I think the really interesting question, the question that Susan and I were talking about, that we would like to see answered, is what's going on with these new forms? Things that you could play on that device right there on your iPad, on your cell phone. Yeah. We don't know.
That are actually maybe intellectually stimulating. Well, as Stephanie Leyden said in her piece, the Kaiser Foundation did this study that showed that kids are spending just an inordinate amount of time, 7 hours and 38 minutes in 2010, 6 hours, 20 minutes and 24 hours. It's growing exponentially. So, I mean, how do you measure at what point what's too much? We figured that out with TV, but have we figured it out with the device?
We don't know. So, you know, the American Academy of Pediatrics has some recommendations. Different other child interest organizations have different recommendations. I think it's a very independent and individual recommendation where we understand well the extremes. We think that 7 hours is too much. It has to do with what the kids are doing, how the kids are being creative, the sophistication of the games that are being played. And I think as we go forward, the kids themselves will help us to determine that because they're the ones who will innovate with this material.
All right, I'm going to bring another voice into the discussion. Susan Lin is the director of the Campaign for a Commercial-Free Childhood. Welcome, Susan.
Happy to be here.
So when you say commercial-free, does that mean take away the iPads? What do you mean?
It means that we shouldn't be advertising and marketing to children at all. There's no evidence that it's beneficial. There's tons of evidence showing that commercialism is linked to a whole host of problems that kids are facing today, from obesity to sexualization to youth violence, family stress, and dear to my heart, the erosion of creative play, which is the foundation of just about everything that's worthwhile about being human.
So when you say commercialism, you're going beyond direct advertising. You're talking about devices.
And the content on devices, you know, and that many of the apps that are being marketed to kids today are in fact selling them other media. So they're based on media characters, or, you know, or the purpose of them is really to get the kids hooked on yet another game or another level, or, you know, to keep the kids engaged like that. They're used to sell things, really.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I can understand disapproval, but is it inherently bad, and do we know that?
I think that what we need to do is think about how old the child is that we're talking about. I mean, what's right for babies isn't right for 5-year-olds, which isn't right for 8-year-olds or 16-year-olds. And I think we really need to think developmentally. I mean, there's no evidence that babies, for instance, benefit from any kind of screen time. There's some evidence that it may be harmful.
So, I mean, we look at this, you know, back when it was television, we were so fearful because there was a mindless quality to it. But as we're discussing here, not everything, I mean, there's some stuff out there that's predatory in a sense, but it's not all mindless. Some of it is very stimulating.
But some of television was not mindless.
That's true,
either.
But they weren't watching that.
Well, and I would say, I mean, the best-selling apps, I mean, somebody did do a study on the best-selling apps in the United States, in Britain, and in Australia, and most of them, in fact, undermine rather than promote the kind of creative play that is so essential to learning.
Well, I think that brings up a really interesting point. It's hard. It's very easy retrospectively to say what TV was mindless and what wasn't. I remember very fondly a lot of television that was.
My friend Flicka.
My friend Flicka. I remember the Dukes of Hazzard, which I had a blast watching, and has led. I'm also a novelist. It's led me to write other stories today that I very much enjoy. I think we need to have a better sense of what will have that kind of staying power with the games that we play and let our kids play online. And a lot of those activities, as we pointed out, are incredibly complicated and incredibly complex. And the most important point is to get involved with your kids. I mean, I think that's really the take home.
Exactly. And we're going to be talking about this tomorrow because doctors are actually writing prescriptions. I found this mind-numbingly impossible to believe for kids to go outside and play. So, I mean, I spent the week with 2 5-year-olds who are incredibly stimulated. But, you know, at night or, you know, for an hour, whatever, before dinner, they might get on the iPads, but that seemed normal to me.
Well, I mean, again, we have to differentiate between babies, you know, and older kids. I mean, there is some good stuff for older children. But I think that one of the things we have to think about is how compelling screens are for us and for children. And we really need to think about whether they're habit forming, and there is some evidence.
We already know that.
Right. Okay.
So is everything. What didn't like this in habit forming?
Right. No, that's a good point.
But I think. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say what we don't know is what happens to these little kids when their reward centers of their brain get excited as readily as they do in the absence of learning patience, of learning to sort of tolerate frustration. And it may be that the free-form play, which we both believe strongly in, actually lends itself to holding off on that, but we don't know yet. And there are plenty of online games, like we saw at the MIT Media Lab, where they're doing amazingly innovative things. And I think if we turn to our kids more, they're the ones who will help us to make these things more innovative.
All right. This debate's going to go on for a while. Susan Lin, thank you so much. Steve Schlutzman, thank you.
Thank you.